Illness, Aging, and Death. Chapter 12. Great Relief. Aches and pains are part of having a human body, but to get all wrapped up in focusing on those aches and pains and trying to gain sympathy from others because of them can lead to a very gloomy life. Over the course of our life, we learn to develop descriptive frameworks for the symptoms of disease, both psychological and physical, and it is quite easy to get caught up in what we could call symptomatology. I recently saw a little 3-year-old girl, and she lifted up her foot for me to see and said, "Look, look." So I looked at her foot, and I thought that she was pointing to her new socks, so I complimented her on the socks. But she said very vehemently, "No, look at my ankle." She pulled off her sock and showed to show me the little scrape on her ankle, and she very much wanted me to notice it. It is easy to see in small children how the focus on getting sympathy for aches and pains comes about. When little children fall down, one of the first things they do is to look to see how the people around them are going to react. Then they often start crying, and the adults usually respond with something like, "Oh, you poor thing." This example could be seen as an analogy that illustrates the process of focusing on our aches and pains and attempting to gain sympathy for them. When we focus on our psychological or physical symptoms, then it is possible that we will want to seek out other people who are focusing on the same thing. The moment we introduce our symptomatology into a conversation, we are potentially trying to attract a sympathetic response. We want someone to focus on our psychological or physical symptoms along with us, and that helps support us in believing that they are real. But is this really the way we want to be greeting the symptoms that occur for us? Do we want to spend our time lost in symptomatology? Much better would be to gain certainty in open intelligence and see what all the aches and pains are about from that perspective. In gaining stability and certainty in open intelligence, we are able to see more clearly what should be done in regard to our psychological and physical symptoms. If you do want support for what is happening for you, make sure you choose your support carefully. A person who is confident in open intelligence can support you much better than people who are all wrapped up in their physical and psychological symptoms. The people who are confident in open intelligence are going to be able to support you in the best possible way, whereas the people who are not living that way can't see anything else but psychological and physical symptoms. If we can come to the definitive conclusion within ourselves that all our aches and pains rest in the basic state of open intelligence, that is occasion enough for a victory dance. We have great relief from the excessive focus on aches and pains, but at the same time we know exactly how to handle anything that may come up. The symptoms are no longer anything that can make or break us, and we are no longer a helpless victim to whatever comes up for us. We can be warrior-like in the face of our physical and psychological symptoms. Ultimate medicine and healing. In many countries, people do not have the means for the kind of medical care that is available in the United States or Europe, either because they can't afford it or it isn't available at all. Many of the people around the world deal with devastating illnesses without having many options. They rely on folk medicine or palliative remedies or whatever might be available to them to carry them through to the end. They do not have access to the medical care or the medications they need, and they know that they probably never will. People who don't have the money to go to the doctor or to buy medicine learn how to live a life that isn't dependent on that kind of care. They adapt the use of their mind so that they can live with whatever is occurring. Then, when the end comes after a long illness, they may never have gone to a hospital, and they die very simply in the presence of people they've always known. Many of us in the Western countries have the option of either intensive medical involvement or a simpler, less ordered way of leaving life. I am not necessarily saying that one or the other is the way that it has to be. I am only saying that we have a choice between those two. When we get clear, we see how we can decide what needs to happen for us. Say, for example, you had cancer. If you choose to undergo many diagnostic tests and you get results that aren't good, then along with that negative result will be an avalanche of choices that need to be made in relation to that negative result: surgeries, chemotherapy, medications, more tests, and more therapies of one kind or another. You could say, well, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to have all the tests, the surgery, the chemotherapy, and the radiation. At the other end of the spectrum, you could do nothing, or you could take other measures in between. It all depends on how you want to be focusing your energy and dealing with your physical symptoms. Advertising, word of mouth, and often the healthcare providers themselves lead people to believe that almost everyone is choosing the path of extensive medical treatment, and that if you don't choose it, you are the oddball. But the fact is that there are quite a few people who are not choosing to have extensive medical treatment, and with the baby boomers now getting into old age, there may be many more not choosing it. So, you could choose a medicalized lifestyle, or you could choose to do without medical care, but whichever it might be, you can also choose to put your focus on gaining certainty and open intelligence. If you proceed along with a course of medical treatment, then expect to have people treating you who aren't going to suggest that you engage stable open intelligence as the primary source of your healing. By reaching for the ultimate medicine and healing of stable open intelligence, you will learn much about yourself and your own inherent stability. You can live an entire life with gracious, stable open intelligence that is exalted and beyond measure, and by the power of open intelligence, you will see unmistakably what your choices should be in regard to serious illness. Well-being in long-term illness. When we are facing a lengthy and very painful illness, it is crucial to recognize that we need not be a victim of our condition. Well-being will come about through the clear seeing of our situation. We will not have well-being as long as we take ourselves to be a victim of what's going on with the illness. The fundamental illness that we in fact have is the mental instability that causes us to feel like we are a victim of the physical illness and the thoughts and emotions that come with the illness. From open intelligence, we can see what to do and how to act in terms of the situation that's going on for us. Even if somehow we found some kind of a cure for the physical illness, the mental instability would still be there. The basic instability whereby one perceives oneself to be a victim of one's circumstances. All of our ideas of being a victim of ourselves or of other people, places, and things have to go out the window. It is of course difficult to be facing a long-term illness, but when people face extreme hardship, very often they are very clear about finding a skillful way to deal with the pain and suffering. They start to understand that seeing oneself as a victim of the suffering isn't necessarily the way that works best, and they begin looking for a way that does work. No matter what happens as regards the illness, there is no medicine for death. What will sustain us at death is to gain complete confidence in the nature of our own being. To get familiar with that, we need to correct the fundamental misperception that thoughts and experiences are our enemy. If it isn't corrected, we will feel victimized to one degree or another. If the physical condition changes for the better, that is fine, but we cannot count on that. Rely on open intelligence and come to know that this is something we can count on when dealing with illness. Have complete faith in the efficacy of just that. Skillful aging. It's really important when we are getting older that we are totally clear about what's going on and what our choices are. What will be of greatest help to us when the body begins to fall apart and we know that we are eventually going to have to face death? Material possessions, wealth, security, and acclaim will not be sufficient support to allow us to maintain open intelligence in the face of the emotional burdens, depression, and the loss of physical ease and comfort that come with aging. When we are young, our whole life is in front of us. We are eager to make something out of ourselves in some way, and we live with that hope decade after decade. However, when we realize that this constant seeking to make something out of ourselves has come to an end, and we know that the body is aging and we are headed towards death, it can be very sad, even depressing. In fact, one of the greatest health problems for seniors is depression. Early in life, we have a strong physique, and if we get sick, we bounce right back. But at some point that comes to an end and we don't bounce back. When we're young and we feel great and our bodies are functioning well, we think that we can get away with indulging, avoiding, or replacing the data in order to try to improve our experience. But when we are old, we realize that our bodies and our minds are falling apart and the antidotes won't work as well. We're not able to indulge our physical desire like we once did, so we can't use that as an antidote. We realize that the condition of our body will grow increasingly worse with no possibility of avoiding or replacing unpleasant bodily states with a state that is more pleasant. When it becomes clear that none of the antidotes will work any longer, people can become depressed. They feel depressed because they don't know a way out of these data. When there's no notion whatsoever that all the data can in fact be completely resolved in the indestructible basic state, then data can take hold in an older person more and more. The only thing that can guarantee us that we're not going to be overwhelmed by what occurs late in life is to be rooted in intrinsic open intelligence. That's the best medicine. No matter what age we are, we can start right away with that medicine. Whatever the age, whatever the condition, whatever the opinion about the circumstance, the greatest stance is to be rooted in one's own intrinsic open intelligence and to gain more and more certainty in that. What an adventure! We are never too young and never too old to gain certainty in open intelligence. We are always exactly the right age. Open intelligence never collapses into young or old. It responds with perfect equanimity to everything that is appearing without any exception, all-inclusive, all-encompassing. This is the easy way to live. Freedom from the fear of death. It's really important that we gain certainty in open intelligence in regard to all the bodily sensations we will experience in life. Otherwise, when we have illnesses, pain, and unpleasant sensations, we will get distracted by stories about them. It's really important to truly understand the nature of these sensations, because through that understanding, we can develop a balanced view about what's going on with us. The more we gain certainty in open intelligence, the more we see that we've had uncomfortable sensations all of our lives, but maybe we ignored them or glossed over them because it would be overwhelming to allow ourselves to be with all these sensations. The reason we may have repressed or ignored these uncomfortable physical symptoms is that we don't want to face the fact that we're going to die. Well, guess what? We are going to die. When we gain certainty in open intelligence, we can allow all the sensations, the comfortable ones, the uncomfortable ones, and all the ones in between, to be as they are. We uncover an incredible wisdom that has a totally balanced view. It's only in that balanced view that we really can choose options and alternatives that will serve us and serve others completely. If not, it is very likely that we'll get sucked into a story about whatever symptoms we are experiencing. When we allow all of our bodily sensations to be as they are, then we come to understand the datum of death and are less afraid of it. In my own experience in gaining certainty in open intelligence, this was one of the very initial fruits of the practice. After a life filled with foreboding fears of death that got me lost in all kinds of incredible stories, the fear disappeared completely, never to return. By really encountering this fear of death in the practice of short moments many times and just allowing all the fear to be as it is, you are able to have complete relief from the fear of death. This relief can come swiftly and surely, or it can come slowly, but whatever way it comes, please allow yourself to gain certainty in the utter lucidity of open intelligence in the direct encounter with these data. By doing so, when you are dying, you will be able to easily rely on that lucidity, and all the accompanying data of being a somebody will resolve. All there is the utter lucidity of open intelligence. Ready for death. There is no getting out of death. That is self-evident, but many of us are trying to sidestep dealing with death because in an unconscious way we imagine that somehow life will just go on and on. So, it is very important to come to terms with the fact that death will come. It cannot be avoided, and we have no idea when it will come. It could come at any moment, so in the face of a health dilemma, the priority about our actions should not only be, how am I going to solve this temporary health crisis, but also, how will I meet my death, which could occur at any moment? The present moment is the right time to begin relying on open intelligence, regardless of how old we are or what our life situation is. At the same time, when we are young, healthy, and strong, that is an opportune time to rely on open intelligence, because the more we age, the more there will be the demands of the physical body, emotions, and thinking, and the more our energy will be sapped by the aging process. We all die of the same thing, death. If we really want to be ready for death, then that's going to come from realizing that all phenomena whatsoever, including death, are the dynamic energy of open intelligence. To see that all phenomena are included in open intelligence is very freeing. When we have complete certainty in that recognition, we live life afraid of nothing. Having a plan for death. We should have a plan that accounts for the fact that death can come at any moment. That plan is to gain certainty in open intelligence right now. We should also have a practical plan for what we will do if we receive devastating news about our health. For instance, we may get a diagnosis that we have heart disease and we need open heart surgery, or we may find that we have cancer and we have 6 months to live. We are told that we have the options of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, and that we need to decide very soon what we will do. We should have a plan about what we're going to do before we ever hear that news, whether we use the plan or not when we get the news. This is an expression of the balanced view of wisdom. This will save us a lot of grief, and it will save the people around us a lot of grief. If we don't have that plan, not only will we be hearing shocking and startling news, but we'll also be hearing all sorts of proposals and suggestions surrounding that news that we've never had to deal with before. These are likely to be matters that most of us don't know much about, so we might not be able to fully understand what our options are. In a very practical sense, what would that detailed plan look like? It would involve delegating a medical power of attorney and having other legal instruments in place that indicate exactly what should be done. The people who are part of that plan should know the details about it and should have agreed to it. Additionally, one should have one's household affairs in a condition such that our death would not be a great burden to others. In other words, it should be clear where the possessions will go once the person has died. There should be a will that has been drawn up with clear direction in terms of a funeral and whether there will be a burial or a cremation. If everything is laid out so completely, then no one else has to do anything except execute what's been planned. With wisdom, we know exactly how to organize all of our affairs, including the practical affairs in our daily walk of life, financial and business decisions, our relationships with food, work, friends and family, our love life, our social life, and whatever else it might be. Through short moments, repeated many times, we come into true open intelligence, compassion, and wisdom in which we uphold our own naturally occurring dignity and integrity. That way we can be completely beneficial to ourselves and others. The process of dying. If we haven't become convinced of our own mortality, by the time we're around 60, our mortality is going to come calling. Once the body starts to fall apart, the mind may also start to fall apart, and then all the strategies that have been put in place for controlling the mind won't work. Even if we're able to get them to work now and again, when we're on our deathbed, they definitely won't work because the mind gets all fuzzy and confused. If we've been doing positive affirmations, we're not going to be able to do them anymore. Even if we could do them, they would seem extremely hollow. We'll be too confused to drum up, "I am alive and well," and to be saying, "I am rich and famous" on our deathbed would be pointless. In the process of death, our whole way of perceiving everything completely breaks down. If we have felt that we were in control all of our lives, we won't feel that way at the time of death. Everything starts shutting down. The seeing gets fuzzy, we can't smell or taste anything anymore, and when we try to touch something, we can't really feel it's there. We can't feel the warmth of the skin of our loved ones. Our hearing starts to fade out. We can feel our heartbeat getting weaker, and our breath gets shallow. We lose any sense of being able to feel emotion about anything, and we lose our ability to think about anything. When we are dying, we don't have the ability to conceptualize any longer, so the whole point of view of my life begins to disappear as though it never was. That can be very frightening if we've thought that my life was essential to our identity. In the moment of death, everything goes completely haywire. Most of the time, the dying person can't say anything to the people around them, but they are thinking thoughts like, "Oh my God, what's going on? I never thought it would be like this. This is really scary. I'm probably never going to eat again or have a drink of water again. Pretty soon I'll take my last breath." When we are dying, we are in a completely different world of data from the people around us who have no idea what we are going through. It's easy to be pretty anxious in a situation like that, but if we prepare ourselves by deeply understanding the fundamental nature of our own condition, death will be just another here and now. There won't be any writhing and tweaking, or even if there is writhing and tweaking, we'll be completely relaxed and at ease. By the power of instinctive recognition, we look everything right in the eye. When we look death right in the eye, then we're no longer afraid of it. Every here and now, whatever it is, no sight, no hearing, no taste, no touch is just fading away. By the power of instinctive recognition, we are as we are, right here and now. When we draw our final breath, even though we will all die someday, it isn't open intelligence that dies. Our phenomenal appearance may change, but it only changes within the continuous flow of open intelligence, what it's always been anyway. When we recognize that the indestructible basic state of open intelligence is the basis of all of our appearances, including our death, then we can have an easeful death because we're not looking at our death as being a separation or an end. It isn't that we need to think this through and convince ourselves. We instinctively realize that death is merely another data within open intelligence that has been labeled as something and then given significance based on the definitions of the perceiver. By the power of instinctive recognition of the basic state of open intelligence, it's realized that the fundamental definition of death is the indestructible basic state. Just as the fundamental definition of birth is the indestructible basic state, and the fundamental definition of all of life is the indestructible basic state. To have the precious opportunity of finding out about open intelligence is not something to be taken lightly, because the instinctive recognition of open intelligence is what will allow us to die in total peace. A beautiful death. When we think about death, a beautiful death isn't usually what comes to mind. We have many thoughts related to death, and we hope that we might avoid a difficult death, but many of the ways in which we've been introduced to death don't support us in feeling that we can have a beautiful death. We primarily learn one of two things. One is that when we die, if we've been good, we go to heaven, but if we've been bad, we go to hell. The second belief that many people have is that when we die, we will be reincarnated according to our karma, and we will get another lifetime in which we hopefully can have a better life. When we live under the pall of data such as heaven and hell or karma and reincarnation, then we feel very restricted in our life. We feel that death is the final assault on us as a somebody. Our life will end, and it is this enemy death that will take it away. If we don't view death as an enemy, we at least view it as a foe, but the only reason we do so is because we don't really understand what death is. It's really important for us to realize that this death that we all will face is very much something that we can become acquainted with in life. How do we become acquainted with it? By knowing who we are. Gradually, we become familiar with ourselves as the timeless nature of open intelligence that is the space of all data, including the datum of death. When we live our lives with great diligence as timeless open intelligence, we have the great fortune of knowing that we are free. We no longer have the concerns of the body, and all the restrictions of our body vanish naturally. We're very clear that the body is a datum and that it's not the basis of who we are. We see that the substance of who we are is open intelligence, which is the great reality of everything. Then, even though we're still experiencing a body, we become acquainted in a very real way with what will sustain us at the time of death. Rather than feeling confined to the body, We feel more like the space inside a vase, or like the waning moon vanishing into the expanse of the sky. Our practice of growing familiar with this as the true reality of who we are in life is what prepares us for a beautiful death. This is the great reality of ending our lives. We become the timeless open intelligence that we've always already been. That timeless open intelligence is entirely empty of being anybody, yet at the same time it is naturally present as everything. Death, rather than being something to be feared, is something that we can embrace. What more intimate way is there to be with ourselves and to be with each other than to serve each other in having a beautiful death?